Oh, hello there. Yes. Well, yesterday was a real political. I don't know. What's the opposite of a bombshell? A stamp squib that was Lee Anderson walking across the floor, metaphorically, to reform. I think it's worthwhile sort of just thinking briefly about Lee Anderson and exactly what he represents, and then thinking about the wider metaphor that he also represents. So, Lee Anderson, a man who is basically just a fairly nasty racist, initially rose on the back of, fairly distasteful right-wing politics in the Labour Party, his association with Gloria de Piro. I knew Gloria de Piro when she was a 17-year-old firebrand and, continued knowing her into her early 20s when she was active in student politics. One of the two of us has changed. Not me. Yes, anyway, and then obviously just deciding that the money was going to be with the Conservatives because he really wants to represent that salary and that status that he gets for Ashdown, which is his primary concern, isn't it? Yes. And of course from there it's merely another little hop to the slightly less respectable racist party that is Reform. I mean, he could have joined Britain First. Why not? We live in that kind of atmosphere where anything is possible. But obviously it's a free speech issue for him, because it's always a free speech issue for the racists, isn't it? Yes, they always have to have their right to be racist, except of course they're not racist, they're just plain talkers. Of course he isn't, because he's a man who basically, in the words of Groucho Marx, that if you don't like those principles, he has others. An epitome of that. Yes. And of course he's desperately worried that the money will dry up, which is the primary motivator. The man that said that he was been offered money to join Reform. The man who backed the bill in 2020 to make it statutory for people crossing over the floor to have a by-election. No news of that today, no. So, casting aside Mr. Anderson into the pit of why am I bothering, we come to the wider notion of conservatism in the mid-2020s. We had Boris Johnson delivering an 80-seat majority to them, which they've completely spaffed up the wall, one way or another, and have no one to blame but themselves. I know they have lots of people to blame. There are brown people, trans people, doctors, teachers, the blob, immigration people, students, lazy people, women, humans, small dogs, and other things they don't like. Any form of life, basically. Yes. And just thrown it completely away due to vile corruption and blinding incompetence, which of course is all our fault. And yeah, I think that's a perfect metaphor. I will look forward to somebody giving GB News a great deal of grief about him. Once again, yet another platform for reform. I wonder why they're doing so well in the polls. Oh, well, they just have that and the Mail to a certain extent, and certainly these days the Daily Telegraph behind them. Because if you can't have one form of fairly nasty, sort of quasi-fascist and racist party in the Conservatives, you might as well have a spare up your sleeve. And having a spare up your sleeve is perhaps the best metaphor I can think of at this precise moment in time for Lee Anderson, a man who represents nothing and nobody, and yet will be trotted out as somehow the archetypal, real, honest bloke out there. Yeah. Making me laugh. Anyway, do have a lovely... I was vitriolic, wasn't it? Do have a lovely Tuesday. It's going to be an odd week for me, this one, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be a slow one. But do enjoy your free speech. Remember, it may not last for long.